Good morning, Arca family. My name is Mr. Hanks. Welcome to Lesson 3 for Unit 4, Chapter 1. We are rolling through the Roaring Twenties, and we're once again going to revisit the African Americans and the advancements they were making during this time, with a few callbacks to a lesson in Unit 3, Chapter 3. We're going to once again kind of look at the Great Migration, the Harlem Renaissance. So we're going to kind of see, and for the it ties to our objective, explain the causes and effects of migration and popular shifts in the United States during the early 20th centuries. And there's a lot of recall with this lesson, not just to our previous lesson, but also to grade 5, because in grade 5, the Renaissance, everything happened. That Renaissance, which occurred between the 1300s and the 1500s, was a period of cultural rebirth in Europe and included artists such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo. So the Harlem Renaissance, by contrast, was uniquely fully American and a rebirth of African American culture. So we're going to really dive in, kind of take a look at that. No primary resource today, but we do have two very deep readings. So how do you believe the Harlem Renaissance affected the lives of African Americans? That's our objective, and once again, providing a little bit of callback from our previous lesson. We have two readings for the day, and that is the Great Migration, the Harlem Renaissance, and we're going to also throw in the Lost Generation, which was kind of the post-World War I era. We'll kind of talk about that too in a bit. So when it comes to the Great Migration and the Harlem Renaissance, I want my students to make sure I understand the flowering of African American culture in the 1920s was not confined just to Harlem. It also took place in other major cities across the country like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Washington, D.C. And yeah, I'm not going to really get too much into that. But I want to know why did, once again, going with those questions, why did large numbers of African Americans migrate from the South in the 1920s? What were some of those pull factors? I'm going to also recall to a primary resource that we had covered and was even tested on too for Unit 3, Chapter 3. What was the Harlem Renaissance? So I wanted students to kind of answer that in a full, like, ticketism format thing. And what influence did Augusta Savage, Jacob Lawrence, and Sergeant Claude Johnson have on the Harlem Renaissance? Some very popular figures from that time period. Just to kind of roll through this lesson. Because if you think about you're going to also see like some jazz music. That was also an important part of the Harlem Renaissance. So important jazz musicians of the era was like Ella Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington, and Louis Armstrong. Weekly radio broadcasts kind of like gave them like a spotlight, gave them a platform that they could spread their new music. And once again, it's all contributing to the African American culture rebirth. Hughes and Houston helped bring African American experience to a wider audience. And Hughes says life was to explain and illuminate the African American condition in America. Hurston wrote about African American life and folklore, and like her novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God, she even described the struggles of Janie Crawford, an African American woman from the South. So some other things we're going to kind of bring to light in this lesson. Jumping to the second reading, The Lost Generation, we're going to talk about, different things happening, breaking out due to the post-World War I era. Only two questions to kind of go with this, like what was the Lost Generation? What theme was notable in the writings of the Lost Generation? Who were some notable figures from that Lost Generation? And we kind of mentioned that at the end of Unit 3, Chapter 2, who the Lost Generation was, and how do you think the members of the Lost Generation felt about the growing consumer culture in the United States during the 1920s? Because, there's a lot that you have to understand. So, like, I think it was Gertrude Stein is generally credited with coining the term the Lost Generation to describe the post-World War I generation. In a conversation with a young Ernest Hemingway, Stein remarked, "You are all the Lost Generation." Hemingway used the expression as like an epigraph to the novel The Sun Also Rises, which characterizes the feelings of the young, disillusioned expatriates in post-World War I Paris as well. So I also kind of want students to know what a protege is. It's a person who's guided and supported by an older and more influenced or influential person. So you'll kind of see some of them taking on those leadership roles as well. The Lost Generation, you can kind of say, was like a group of young American writers who wrote about disillusionment and alienation. Ernest Hemingway and Scott Fitzgerald were also notable writers of the Lost Generation who lived as expatriates in Paris because they had become disillusioned with life in the United States. That's how big of an impact World War I had on them. So that's just some things we're kind of going to discuss going forward. But that's pretty much it for this lesson. I will have the students investigate how the Great Migration influenced the cultural landscape of northern cities, and that's that cultural impact that cultural rebirth, that reset. and assess the contributions of those specific artists or writers from the Harlem Renaissance to American literature and music. So what influence did they have on modern day literature and music? So we'll take a look at that as well. I'll also, once again, refer to this picture that we saw at the end of Unit 3, Chapter 3. For the Roaring Twenties, this is also the Great Migration of African Americans that led to the cultural phenomenon known as the Harlem Renaissance, them leaving to those major cities in the United States, escaping from the South for reasons we've covered already, and that's just mainly segregation. And we're not done with segregation in the South yet. We're going to revisit that midway through Unit 6. So yeah, with that was pretty much the Harlem Renaissance and the Great Migration and the Lost Generation all in one. So quite a bit of information to take in on today's lesson, but take your time and learn it. You'll do a good job on it. That's pretty much it for this lesson. So remember to very strong minds, strong hearts, great minds, strong hearts, all that. Live the ARC away, love yourselves, and love each other. And have a great day. Hopefully I'll see you on the next class. Hopefully everything's going okay. All right. Have a good one. Bye.